What is going on, everybody? It's the On Friar podcast brought to you by NBC7. Pleasure to be in the presence of one Derek Togerson. I am Darnay Tripp. Here we are, Derek. Just chugging along through September.
Yeah, we still got to do this. Why I'm not entirely certain, but yeah, we still have to do this. So should we start the autopsy now, or wait for the patient to be completely deceased first?
Whoa. Whoa, here we go. What is, are you hearing that?
No.
Oh, all right, good. I'm glad I was the only one. I think I had too many windows open and I started hearing us because I think I had us open on YouTube. So apologies if you heard that. Yeah. Well, we do this year round, Derek. So
This is true. Yes.
You know, we are a year-round Padres podcast, and this is not the. I think the off-season pods will probably be a little bit more. You know, that wasn't necessarily the case last year. Like the September and October, like that was a really, really fun part, and the off-season was cool too. I think this is one of those years where it's almost like when you have like a Madden franchise or like the old college football franchise, like you get bored playing the games like half the season in, and then you just want to like do the draft and do recruiting and sign players and that sort of thing. I think a lot of folks felt that way about those games, and I kind of feel that way about this Padres season. Let's get on to the off season and see what happens.
Is that a video game reference?
That was a video game reference. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I don't get that.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully some of our audience does.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm the square here who's not. I never played video games. I don't understand them. I don't get them. I'm not good at them. So I just I'd watch like my oldest son play like Call of Duty or something, and he'd be taking guys out. I'm like, how'd you even see that person?
Yeah.
It just they don't. My brain doesn't work that way.
Well, I'm sadly like a retired video game player, so all my experience is going back to like college and early adulthood. I do miss it. And if I tried to like catch up to your son and play Call of Duty, I know it just gets smoked. So it's kind of depressing. Like my playing days are over. But that's what I remember. Really enjoying the off season, and hopefully it's an enjoyable off season because they need to make some things happen after this year, but we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. I figured we get into kind of like, what are we watching for? Like, what do we want to see? What are the storylines that matter? What's getting our attention? Because now we're kind of beyond the point of scoreboard watching and monitoring the standings and that sort of thing. So we'll get into that. Also have some numbers that just kind of make you scratch your head when you think about the season, and also like, how does that inform how we think about this team and the plan going forward? So get to all that. First things first, thanks to OG's, the sponsor of the On Friar podcast. For over 30 years, they've been crafting award-winning microbrews with over 60 medals in international, national, and regional competitions. OG's, one of the most decorated breweries in the world, with each OG's location having 12 proprietary OG's beers on tap. They're constantly updating their menu. Go in there, check out the fresh new items, whether it's Mediterranean salmon bowl, some new pizzas, Nashville hot chicken sandwich. You can take advantage of OG's loyalty program. It's super easy. You can do it online, earn loyalty points, rewards, and exclusive offers, all of which leads to fun and free food. And now ordering online from OG's, it's easier than ever to get OG's straight to your door. So thanks to OG's and all they do for the On Friar podcast and us at NBC7. Time for the walk-up music. What is up? On Friar podcast, Derek Togerson, Darnay Tripp. Pleasure to be with you on this Thursday off day for the Padres after dropping 2 of 3 against the Phillies in kind of another one of those series that felt a bit like a microcosm of the season, where you have like an agonizing loss on Monday. Then they look like a World Series capable team on Tuesday. And just when you think, oh, that was impressive, then they have just a miserable game on Wednesday, which included a broken wrist for Gary Sanchez. And now one of the bright spots and the guys that we've enjoyed watching and has been really, really fun is done for the season. So
second broken wrist and a hit by pitch in a couple weeks. Jake Cronenworth had one too. What is going on?
Yeah, it's wild. And so they continue to add injury to insult with, you Darvish and Joe Musgrove, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but it just continues to go from bad to worse. And it'll be interesting to see what happens with Sanchez. He said this week he would like to stick around. Certainly been a good fit, and he's just added an element to this club that they've been missing just with the pop, especially coming from that catcher position. And just one of those guys that's a threat to change the game with a single swing whenever he's at the plate. And there hasn't
Mhm.
been enough of that with this team. And beyond that has been really good defensively. Talk about catcher ERA with Blake Snell and how good a combination those two have been. And Snell's season really, he kind of kicked it into a new gear once he was paired up with Gary Sanchez. And so just another kind of one of those disappointing notes to what's been a agonizing, a very, very frustrating season.
I like Gary. Gary probably needs to stick around. Honestly, I have no idea what kind of contract Gary Sanchez is going to command because, I mean, he was the fastest player in American League history to 100 home runs, which is crazy to think about. And then he was terrible. I mean, truly couldn't stick with the Twins, couldn't stick with the Mets. Like they were just giving him away. Everything went completely haywire for him for about a year and a half, 2 years. And he goes back to San Diego, and from his first start, he looks like he's back to being Gary Sanchez with the Yankees in his first couple of years. I mean, darn near an 800 OPS, better than he's ever been defensively. So does he say, well, I'm the guy who was one of the best offensive catchers in the history of the game for a couple of years? Or is it the guy who we resurrected your career here, so we're going to pay you on that scale? So I don't know where the truth lies with Gary Sanchez. I'd imagine he'd probably do one of those like 1 year, 10 million kind of thing to say, let's see if you can do it for another year, and then we'll start talking about a long-term kind of contract. That's where my guess would go with Sanchez. But then somebody's going to come in and overpay who needs an offensive-minded catcher, right? That's you just know somebody's going to do that given the numbers that he put up. Will that team be the Padres? I honestly don't know. Remember, Ethan Salas is probably only about a year and a half away now. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind too. And Luis Campusano, it's these freaky little injury things with him. But he's proven he can be an everyday catcher, I think, for the most part, too. And again, small sample size, but he's looked really good this year.
Certainly. And good for Luis bouncing back from taking an uncomfortable blow to an unfortunate area. And he was down for the count and then out of that game. And so sounded like he needed to invest in a new cup, find a different brand to wear, and came back out and was productive in that win. I want to say on Tuesday, I think drove in 3 runs. So no, Luis has been awesome, and that pair has been really, really cool. And I think the most fun and promising catcher combo in the 5 years I've been covering the team, and certainly the most threatening at the plate. And yeah, I mean, you make a good point just with, somebody seeing, him revitalize his career and maybe wanting to pony up to go get him. Now with the Padres in the financial situation that they are, does that keep them from being able to be that team that maybe pays a little bit more than they would want to keep a guy like that? And that's where, we're at with these big contracts and all the different kind of financial stuff you hear with this club. That's one thing I'll be interested in as the offseason goes, like how aggressive can they be really, and how are they able to kind of spread whatever they're willing to pay out throughout the roster when so much of it is devoted to kind of this core group of players.
That's going to be the interesting thing. And one thing I keep going back to is they've got a lot of money coming off the books. You got to assume they're not going to re-sign Blake Snell. He's going to be too expensive with all the contracts, the extensions they handed out.
I hate that.
Yeah, the year that he's had, he's going to be in the $30 million a year range, probably, especially if he has another Cy Young attached to him. If Josh Hader, you got to figure is probably gone. Drew Pomeranz, we know is gone. Luis Garcia, you have to figure probably is gone. That's $45 million right there they have to play around with. Some of that goes to Tatis as his contract continues to increase. A little bit of that goes to Manny. You're going to have to probably give some of that to Soto in arbitration. But you're not paying a whole lot. You're going to have 30 million, 25, 30 million a year just by not having those guys in. They can find something and do something with that. So they're going to be able to certainly add something in free agency, or maybe just retain a guy like Gary Sanchez. The money is there.
Yeah, no doubt. And I tweeted this a couple weeks ago. I think Josh Hader is. I think it doesn't make any sense to keep him, and that's completely independent of his performance because he's largely been really, really good. I think it frustrates people how, maybe specific he is and how he's used, and I understand that. But when you're in the spot that you're in, you just can't pay. What is he making? 14 this year? You can't pay 10 plus for your closer at this point when you have to build depth in the roster, especially when what was Kirby Yates making? What was Trevor Rosenthal? Now he's a deadline deal. What was he
Brad
making?
Hand.
Mark Melanson, Taylor Rogers. Those guys were all like pretty good, close to or all-star. I think all those guys were all-star. I don't know what Rosenthal, you know.
Roosevelt was only here for the pandemic year, so no.
Yeah. So basically all those guys were all-stars, got them all on the cheap. They were all productive. Now, were they as lights out as Josh Hader? No.
They were more
Mostly
versatile than Josh Hader.
more versatile than Josh Hader. Yeah, absolutely. And way, way cheaper. And I think when you have a team that's consistently hit on that spot, now, I think last offseason, people would have been more open to the idea of saying, well, we got Robert Suarez, move him into that role. Now, maybe you're not so confident and see what happens, going forward. But they've been able to find closers, effective closers on the cheap. And I just feels like a natural spot where you got to kind of cut costs.
Yeah, and Hader is probably going to ask, I don't know if he'll get it. He very well might, but he's going to go after an Edwin Diaz kind of contract. You're talking about a 9-figure deal. And for a guy who is as limited, even as important as the ninth inning is, and we know that. And in San Diego, we know that probably better than any other place. Look at the litany of great closers we've had here, going back to Goose Gossage and Raleigh Fingers and Mark Davis, and it's Trevor Hoffman. And just go down the list. I mean, Houston Street was an all-star here. We've always had a closer, right? I think maybe that's why people get so frustrated. I know I do with a guy like Josh Hader, because we know we had Goose Gossage. Who's going to go out there and throw 3 innings 5 days in a row and not give a damn? We want that kind of mentality. Now, no one's ever going to be used that way, but you want a guy who's willing to be used that way if the circumstances call for it. So I think you could probably find another guy who can give you really a high quality 9th innings and not pay what you have to pay to keep a guy like Josh Hader, who, and I like Josh. He's a fun guy to talk to, very insightful at times. But he's just not the kind of guy I think you need when he's going to be, as a manager, you have to consistently think, I can't bring him in for 4 outs here. I have to figure out how to get this last out of the 8th, which sometimes is a lot more difficult to get than the 2nd out of the 9th. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And by the way, I just looked it up to make sure that I was right on this, and I was. Gary Sanchez is a major power threat, right? You know what the Padres single season franchise record for home runs by a catcher is?
No clue.
It's 22. By the 1 year Mike Piazza was here in 2006. That's it. That's wild to me. No other Padres catcher in history has hit 20 homers in a season.
What does Gary have?
What's that? He had 22 that year.
What does Gary have, or what did
Gary have? Right, Gary has right now, what, 13, 14, something like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, check it out. And again, very small sample size, but he's got 30 home run seasons. Like, we know what he's capable of. And if he's swinging the bat like he has been, with the Padres, that's almost a given at this point. So just the kind of the prospect of having a guy like that with that kind of power behind the plate kind of makes you drool a little bit, especially if you can get him probably on a fairly team-friendly deal, at least for 1 year.
No doubt. No doubt. Hey, if you are watching along on YouTube, hit the chat. We'll get to your comments. Appreciate you being with us. Thanks for listening to your podcast app, on the NBC7 streaming channel, on your Roku TV device, or on NBC7.com. Glad to have you with us. Where do you want to go first? I've got a few numbers. I'm also curious, like what are you watching for? What direction do you want to start in? I
don't even know at this point. Like, why are we watching? At this point, why are we watching? And really, the only thing I can think of is Pedro Avila, right? Like, is he going to continue doing this to earn himself a spot in the starting rotation next year? Like, After that, what is there really to get excited about to watch for the rest of this? Because right now they're watching the rest of this year for either personal accolades,
Right.
can somebody reach some sort of a personal milestone, or who's going to help us next year? And right now, hell, I honestly don't know, Darnay.
Do you find the Blake Snell Cy Young pursuit interesting?
No, because he shouldn't win the Cy Young Award. And I hope he doesn't win the Cy Young Award, because nobody with that many walks, and his FIP is like almost 4. So if he didn't have one of the best defenses in baseball behind him, we would not even have him in the conversation. How is a guy with that many strikeouts and that low of an opponent's batting average have a whip of 1.25? Because he walks half the ballpark every time he's out there. It's infuriating to watch him pitch. And I'm still ticked off at him for the first half of that doubleheader in Philadelphia, because I'm looking back at that and going, that looks like the moment the season started to tank on the Padres right there. It bugs me. It just bugs me. I mean, give it to Justin Steele. Spencer Strider, I think, is a lot more deserving of the Cy Young Award this year than Blake Snell is.
Justin Steele is the National League leader in ERA plus at the moment. For what it's worth, I was just looking at some of the leaderboards and like who's leading what, Strider's, throwing more innings. Where is Steele? Steele is a little bit fewer than Snell for what it's worth, as I'm just kind of cruising around fan graphs right now. Strikeouts per 9, Strider with a couple strikeout edge over Blake Snell, if that's what you fancy. Hey, WAR. What about WAR? What does that say? Spencer 4.7, Blake Snell 3.0, Justin Steele 4.3. So those guys have an edge on Blake Snell. Maybe that's why. Maybe because, is there a little more depth to their game and a fewer base runners? That could be it. Blake Snell has the edge on those guys in ERA. Strider's now 3.83. I didn't realize he was that high.
Look at his FIP. It's going to be a lot lower. He's under 3.
Justin Steele 2.55 ERA, so he's right there with Snell. Let me find. I was just looking at it. Where is it? I'll find it. So I don't know. I mean, he's obviously in the conversation. I think it would be fun if he, continued to shove and maybe with a few fewer walks, some cleaner starts, because he's had some good ones, but obviously starts where he feels like, all right, I let too many guys on and it could have been better and this and that. So I don't know. I find that interesting now with however many, handful of starts he's got left, and then kind of considering what the other guys do, like how they finish. If he's had his best season since 2018, if it ends up being a Cy Young year, I find that a little bit interesting, even though like it is a personal accolade, and maybe just the frustration of the season makes us a little bit less interested in those personal accolades, especially when, like you said, there's a chance that he isn't a Padre after this season. Like, how much does that play into it? Oh, here we go. Spencer Strider 2.89 on the FIP. Justin Steele 2.98. Blake Snell 3.69. So there you go.
There you go.
Walks per 9. What are we looking at? Walks per 9. 5.17 walks per 9. Strider 2.89. Steele. Is there anybody else we need to be mentioning? Zach Gallen, I know he was there earlier, but
yeah, Zach Gallen's also a guy who is pitching his way, and he's a guy who's been really good all year. And really last year he was top 5 and probably should have been even higher. He's been really good pitching in Arizona, where people kind of haven't realized that the Diamondbacks are pretty good this year. I think has hurt him. If they're able to stay in the hunt and maybe even get into the postseason, that'll help him a lot with more eyes on him if he keeps doing what he's been doing.
So you're completely out on the Blake Snell Cy Young pursuit.
I don't care.
Doesn't move the needle for you.
Doesn't move the needle for me. I just don't care, because A, he shouldn't win it, and B, it doesn't help next year. It just doesn't.
I would be curious. I haven't seen too much chatter, from the fan base and on Twitter and whatnot about it. I wonder if that'll change in the home stretch. I think there has been so much just kind of discussion about where this team is and their shortcomings and all that. And so maybe that's just kind of overshadowed the whole thing. But I wonder if that is something that people will or are engaged with, because it maybe doesn't feel like it to the degree that you would expect. I mean, if this were Joe Musgrove, it might have a different feel to it.
Yeah, because I think Musgrove, A, local kid, B, he just pitches with such moxie. It's like Snell's stuff is so elite. As you almost look at him and just go, how do you ever give up a base hit?
Mm-hmm.
Like his stuff is so incredible that you just go, just throw it in the damn strike zone. Stop screwing around with all this and trust yourself. It's like we've said on this podcast, the most difficult part of Blake Snell is the 6 inches between the ears. If he can just get out of his own head and just let his stuff go, he would have a 180 ERA every year, and he'd be the most dominant pitcher in the game for a decade. It's infuriating watching him. I mean, a guy like Musgrove, good stuff, sometimes not elite stuff. He's got a couple of really good pitches, but he just comes after you at all times. He's like remember Rocky 2, where Apollo's manager is saying, "Listen, I watched you beat that man like I never seen any man get beat, and that man kept coming after you." That's Joe Musgrove. That is not Blake Snell, which is why a guy like Musgrove, who has no business being in a Cy Young Award race just because of it, based on his stuff, is there. It's because he is battling his ass off to get himself there. So we would all get behind that.
Okay, but do these numbers, I mean, the ultimate results matter, right? Like, do these numbers do anything for you? 0 0 3 2 2 3 0 1 1 0 0 0 2 0 0 1 0 0 1.
Are you writing code?
Do those mean anything to you?
Not without context. What are they?
Earned runs in Blake Snell's start since May 25th, beginning most recently. 0
How many
0
innings
3
you throw in all those?
Quality start, quality start, quality start, quality start, quality start, 3 and 5, 0 and 5, quality start, 1 and 5, 0 and 5, quality start, 6 shutout, 0 and 5, quality start, quality start, quality start, quality start, quality start, quality start.
Okay, that's pretty good. That's really good. Where the hell has it been all year?
What do you mean?
What I'm talking about?
What do you mean? It's literally right there. These are games that he pitched. Start? That's from May 25th on.
Okay, so 2 months into the season, right?
I mean, right? Yeah, like a month and a half into the season. I guess 2 months into the season.
See that, and that's part of the problem. Is
okay,
but
at the beginning of the year. Conversely, the reason Strider's ERA is what it is, allowed 6 and 2 2/3 yesterday, 4 and 6 the start before that, 6 and 2 2/3 August 7th, 4 and 6 August 20th, 5 and 6 August 15th, 5 and 5, 8 and 4, 4 and 5.
So he's blowing up down the stretch.
He's not been, he's no, those weren't in succession. There were gaps in between. There were good starts in between. I was just listing some of his starts.
Oh, so I thought you meant like that was in a row. I was like, whoa.
No, he's had a couple stinkers recently. But no, those are just kind of in the same stretch of what we've seen from Blake Snell. Some of the games that Strider's had where he hasn't been quite as consistent. Justin Steele, there's a lot of quality starts in there. He's been more consistent. 8 scoreless Monday, 6 scoreless before that, 2 and 6, 2 and 6, 3 and 5, 3 and 5 and a third, 3 and 6. Like maybe not as automatic with the quality starts as Snell has had or has been, but he's been a bit more consistent, I would think, than Strider. His worst month, he's got a 3.98 ERA. Snell's worst month, if you include March, the one start into April, you're looking at like high fives, and he's 3.82, 0.87, 0.56, 3 in August, and then he just had 6 shutout in his first start of the month. So I I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's kind of one of the eye of the beholder type races, and the last few weeks could kind of tip the scales in one of these guys' favor. And so I find it interesting where there's not one guy separating himself, it would appear, and it's going to come down to ultimately what the voters value. If these guys continue to be consistent enough and nobody blows up or goes nuts down the stretch.
By the way, Roberto Castavicencio, I hope I'm saying that right, Roberto, has a question. Does he have a quality start pre-June or pre the date that you mentioned? And there might be one in there.
Yeah, May 31st. So
there you go.
Actually, no, May 25th, he allowed 1 in 5 not a quality start. So that's when things kind of turned around for him. And then 6 scoreless in Miami.
On this Cy Young thing, let me ask you this, because one thing that I look at, to throw out the win stat, Roberto did, by the way, fix his spelling on the next one. So good job. Perfect. Throw out the win stat because I want a guy to give my team a chance to win, right? That's what I need. And sometimes I need him to carry the water for me just a little bit longer into games. So one of the things I look at is throw the win stat out because that's lame. Because the way the baseball bullpens are managed nowadays, so many times a win is out of a starting pitcher's hands. If I have to win one game, who am I going with? And if you give me a choice between right now Blake Snell, Spencer Strider, or Justin Steele, Blake Snell is not my first choice. So that tells me that he's probably not the best pitcher in the game in the National League right now this year. If you have a choice to choose between those three guys, knowing what you know, if you have to win one game against a quality opponent, are you picking Blake Snell to be your guy? Knowing the potential volatility there and the walks, and one pitch can let it get away from you.
It's a hard conversation. I mean, it's a good point. It's a hard conversation because it does feel like the postseason is a different game. And we've seen him be really good in the postseason. We've seen him, maybe struggle and not get as deep as we'd like in the postseason. But I don't know. It's like, if you're just going based on the results, he's given his team a chance to win every single time he's been out, basically since the end of May. I would have him over Spencer Strider just based on recent results from Spencer Strider. So, I'd say somewhere between he and Justin Steele, but I don't know that my answer would be no. Now, and you can nitpick, like, look, he's not getting as deep as you would like him to get. But if this team has a reliable 7, 8, 9, then he's accomplishing basically the task that you would want him to one start to the next.
That's a valid point.
But some of these factors, and that's why you don't talk too much about win-loss, is, that's out of his control. Right. What did he start? He started 0-4, 1-6. And so he's like 11-3 in decisions since then, which is kind of crazy. But I don't know. This is more on the Cy Young race than I expected us, but I think it was a good conversation because I think you bring up an interesting point. I think there has been some Blake Snell frustration. I think people do maybe value him now more than they did to start the season, and certainly, maybe going back to last year when he started slow in kind of typical fashion. But I'm curious how much people will engage with the Cy Young aspect of it, knowing he might not be back. Maybe he's frustrated them in the past, and general Padres fatigue. I wonder how much that can impact.
Don't overlook the fact that this is a contract year. So he's pitching for money, whereas he was capable of doing this every year he's been with the Padres, and it hasn't happened. Now that all of a sudden money's on the line, he's pitching like he is one of the greatest pitchers in the game, which we've always known him to have the capability of being. That's another thing to really pump the brakes on, like, whoa, hold on. Are we only going to get this version of you when your contract is up?
He had a 3.38 ERA last year and was really good from the summer on. It wasn't Cy Young level, but he wasn't bad last year.
But he's always had this capability.
Sure.
Right? No one will argue that. He's always been this. His stuff has always been this good.
But okay, so counterpoint, how much better has his changeup been this year, and how much has that unlocked kind of this level? Because as we know, it's been in timeout like his first 2 seasons with the club, and he was super fastball slider reliant, and now for whatever reason, like the changeup has been his secondary pitch, and we obviously know how that plays off the fastball. And so is that part of it too, like kind of figuring out the feel for that pitch? I don't know.
Even if he did just have the fastball, slider, curveball, he's still this good. He still has the capability of doing exactly that. Hey, Rafael, put a clause in his next contract that says he can't have an Xbox. I'm good with that.
Oh, come on. Well, just because you're not a video guy, as we established off the top, but everybody needs their outlet. It's a stressful job. Blow off some steam, get on Twitch, play Call of Duty. I got no problem with that. What do you think about Ha-Seong Kim's a strong finish to Ha-Seong Kim's breakout season? I think that's been one of the silver linings of this year is seeing him come into his own, and all of a sudden you look at like NL WAR leaderboards for position players, and he's right there, amongst the top players, the Ronald Acuñas of the world. Maybe not quite at that level, but you know what I mean. I think, and there's an argument to be made that he is this team's MVP, potential Gold Glove season, probably should be a Gold Glove type season, solidified himself kind of in that leadoff spot. And, I don't think anything he could do the rest of the way could take away from that, but I'm kind of interested in just kind of seeing how he finishes, what his numbers look like, and that sort of thing, and being excited about Ha-Seong Kim as a reason to, when you're watching these games, maybe perk up a little bit when he's at the plate or makes a nice defensive play.
That dude's fun to watch. He's been really, really fun to watch, and I'll tell you, he should. And it's going to be a little bit wild to say this. He should be in the MVP conversation. He's not going to be. He's not going to be, but if you look at the WAR, he's right up there in the top 10 with next to guys like, Acuña is on another planet. And by the way, Ronald Acuña Jr. is going to win the MVP. He should win the MVP. There's no reason that he should not win. It's Acuña, and then you're arguing about who gets second and third place at this point. But Kim, I think, should be a guy who at least gets some. Hey, by the way, look at what this guy's done this year, because he's been so good. His WAR is in the 5s. He's going to end in the 6.5, 7 range. He is, and a lot of that comes on defense. And of course, he doesn't have huge power numbers, but this guy's been so incredible in the leadoff spot for this club. He helped the entire lineup when they finally moved him into that role. And if you can keep him there for the entirety of next year, look at what he might be able to do. He's been an absolute godsend for any kind of fun watching this team offensively, because he's been so just, since he's moved into that spot, consistent at the end of this year, last few months. He's been great. He's been great. Getting him, by the way, next year for another $7 million, that's nothing for a guy who's going to give you what he has been giving you. And he's just entering, he's in his prime right now, and that prime is going to last for a while. So him being on this club this year has been really, really fun to watch. And just, thank goodness he's been there, because, man, he has been probably the most under-talked about, underappreciated, and underrated player in baseball this year.
Yeah, I think, I no arguments here. And right now, according to Baseball Reference, it's Betts, Acuña, Freeman. Those are the only National League guys ahead of Kim in WAR, which is pretty awesome.
Not too shabby.
Luis Campusano, are you interested in seeing Luis Campusano a breakout season of a lesser degree than Kim, but like finally the arrival? 306, 5 homers, 18 RBIs, 831 OPS. Been good enough behind the plate. What does that do anything for you, seeing him continue to kind of establish himself, solidify himself as like an important piece going forward? I might be reaching at this point, but I'm just trying to find anything that, like, when it's the middle of the week and you flip on a game, like, they're down 5-1. Oh, Campusano's up to the plate. Let's see what he does.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about with looking towards next year, right?
Yeah.
And that's exciting. Luis Campusano coming into his own and figuring out all of his immense talent. And by the way, he's still young. He's what, 24? He's a kid. So he's, again, coming
24.
into his prime in the next couple of years. And to see him really figure things out this year, and again, it is a small sample size, but I don't see any reason why he couldn't be at least a 265 with 20 home run kind of guy in 125 starts at the major league level and play pretty well behind the plate as he continues to grow and learn the pitching staff and work with guys. I think he's been really, really positive this year as well. And it makes me not want to overpay for someone like Gary Sanchez. As much as we talked about earlier with him wanting to keep him around, it makes you say, well, we're not in the same point we were last year. It was like, okay, we've got Austin Nola. He's in arbitration. We don't have to go out and overpay a whole lot. If we can get somebody like a Wilson Contreras, we'll go ahead and do that. But, we're going to look hard at it. Now you're like, it's not nearly as big of a gaping hole in the lineup as it was a year ago, knowing you've got somebody who you're pretty high on and can probably handle that. So you can keep a guy like Sanchez and then get him in the lineup for 50 starts as a DH, where you're preserving him and still getting that power bat in there as well. And then maybe go out and get a guy who is going to be able to be a third catcher type. That's I think he gives him a lot of flexibility. Just the fact that he's shown that he can handle things at the big league level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think he answered maturity questions this year too.
Totally.
He had the arrest thing. He's been able to get past that. He's handled himself beautifully. He's been, accessible and amenable in the clubhouse. Like seems like he's really ingratiated himself with the guys. So I think he grew up a lot this year as well. And that might've been the most important part for him.
Yeah. Yeah. That and just staying healthy. Those have, the health part seems to have kind of just been a struggle at points and to now, see him be able to play kind of in a stretch here and see what he can do has been encouraging. I don't know how much people really care about this, but Xander Bogaerts is hitting 591 with a 1500 plus OPS so far in September. His health and like how he rounds out the season when it hasn't been the type of year that he's had and he's dealt with a wrist thing. And I think maybe looking forward to the offseason, like what they do with that, I think will be interesting. Again, I don't know if that's necessarily like a reason to turn on the game if you're like frustrated and have other options, on a Friday night. But I don't know, maybe that's a thing. There was something else that came to mind too. I'm also curious, like, when do we get to the point where they just shut Manny down, maybe shut Bogaerts down, maybe bubble wrap Tatis? You could say his Gold Glove pursuit in right field, maybe that's something that you're kind of keeping an eye out for if he has some more of those kind of mind-blowing type moments that we know he's capable of. But now standing 7 games out and they're kind of in this awkward in between where they haven't mathematically been eliminated, but the writing's on the wall. And so you're just hearing Bob Melvin, the guys say, look, we're just trying to win games, and they're trying to do their best. They know it's probably not going to get them anywhere, but they're not at a point where they're playing a bunch of young guys and resting the vets and doing the things that you see teams do when they're officially out of it. But I'm curious if when that time comes, Manny with, the elbow and Xander with the wrist and whoever else, Tatis just in terms of kind of keeping him healthy when we see less of those guys.
You'd have to think it's something they have to look at, right? I mean, look, Xander Bogaerts, we know got a cortisone shot at the All-Star break, right? Since then, 302 average, 793 OPS. Before that, in the first half, 253 average, 731 OPS. So obviously,
which is fueled by that great first few weeks that he had, and then just
exactly. And before the wrist flared up on him. So when he was healthy, he was raking. Since he doesn't have to deal with the wrist problem, he's raking. So you got to figure everything that's been wrong with Xander this year has been injury related, which goes back to what we knew about him coming in, which is he's going to hit. He's going to give you what he has. He's going to be a good clubhouse guy. He's going to lead. He's been limited physically. Now, what I don't know is his wrist something that you can repair surgically in the offseason?
Yeah. Because
if that's an option, and again, Tatis had his wrist surgically repaired. He looks like he's been fine with it. Is this something that you can deal with to help and maybe give a more permanent fix to, so it's not twice a year getting a cortisone shot just so you can be the guy that everyone knows you can be. So if it's a problem right now with health, and rest does help that, get him off the field. Manny, as we know, he's going to try and play every single day. Don't risk something worse happening, and then you have to have him miss the first part of next year. Get him off the field. The rosters expand to 28, right? Bring Jackson Merrill up. Who, let him play every day just to show us something. Get him dip his toe in the water so some of these guys can rest, or at least even if it's not shutting him down completely, when they are officially eliminated from playoff contention, which is coming fairly soon, probably. Just let him play 3-4 times a week. Get him off the field as much as you possibly can. Bring somebody else up. Let them do something else, right? It's you gotta make sure that you're looking again. It's like what the Chiefs did with Travis Kelce on Thursday Night Football opener, right? Knee's not all the way there. You got 10 days after this before you got to go play another game. You're talking about a marathon here. Don't risk it for right now, because everything that comes after this is exponentially more important than this one game. Do that with your stars right now, because you need to fix this in the offseason for next year. And risking guys, don't be a Brandon Staley. Don't risk guys unnecessarily, because you see what happens when you do that.
I want to say Bogarts was asked about surgery and said, that wasn't the route they needed to take. But I'm Googling. I can't find that. I swear he had said something along those lines, but I might be off there. And so that'll be interesting how they manage that, and if that is a route that they take. And hey, maybe as their big September call up, they could bring Jurickson Profar up from El Paso.
Hey, why not? Maybe he's the missing link this year. How great would it be if Jurickson Profar comes up and they make the playoffs? They go on some stupid run.
I think Jurickson
we just needed pro all year.
I think Jurickson Profar being their September call up tells you all you need to know about the Padres farm system.
Yeah, and by the way, that's the reason everybody's been talking about, are you going to bring Jackson Merrill up? And it's like, you're going to really bring him up from Double-A. It's really aggressive. Well, look at the rest of the system. Who else is more deserving? Is it what Brandon Dixon?
Yeah.
You know what you're getting.
Yeah.
Is it, who insert name here? No, Sullivan, the catcher, Brett Sullivan.
I think he's already
around.
What
you're getting.
Yeah.
They're not the difference makers that you're going to need. So who else do you have in the system that's even close to being close that deserves it? And really, he's the guy who deserves it the most. So why the hell wouldn't you bring him up?
This was a potentially dumb take.
I do it all the time. Go for it.
Yeah, it kind of came up in just chatting with people on Twitter.
That's always a bad idea.
About how the Padres have been fairly resilient all season, and we've talked a lot about their fight. And I think the lack of fight and heart at times has shown up within games. Like they go down 3-0, they go down 5-0, and it's just kind of lifeless the rest of the way. Now the Phillies game the other night, they almost pulled off an amazing comeback. But so it's been like a game to game thing, but it hasn't been like week to week. Like I feel like week to week in stretches, like we've shown resilience, they've shown, bounce back. They haven't gone into like really long, like what we saw in 2019, what we saw in 2021. My dumb take is that, hey, credit to Bob Melvin, because they're continuing to play hard. Something or nothing as we evaluate Bob Melvin, and having seen teams that completely fold once they kind of get to this point, the fact that there's been a lot of times, to use his own words, they've had to pull themselves off the mat, and they've kind of done it, just not to the extent that it's, been able to dig themselves out of the hole that they're in.
No, I think that's valid, because I don't know where the Bob Melvin hate comes from. And I know we're in a day and age now where you just blame the coach. You blame the manager. You blame the head coach. You blame somebody's got to take the fall or take the blame for something like this. And it's going to fall on either AJ Preller, who put the roster together, or Bob Melvin, who is calling the shots along with this roster. Yeah. So I don't know why people think that Bob Melvin all of a sudden just forgot how to manage games, and we're in an era of sports now where people want to fire the coach really fast. And sometimes it's warranted, Nathaniel Hackett. Sometimes it's not warranted. Bob Melvin is one of those times I think it's just not warranted, because one year went completely sideways on him that really nobody can explain why. I mean, look, I'll give you Florida State and Mike Norvell. They gave him a little extra time, and look what he's got going right now.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to let the flavors mingle a little bit when you put together something like this. So I think Bo Mel as you said, he's done a really good job just keeping this thing from going completely haywire, even though it feels like it's gone completely haywire. There are still a lot of positive things about this season. We can nitpick if we'd like to. Just whatever's gone wrong, the lion's share of this blame does not belong to Bob Melvin.
Yeah, and Daniel makes a good point that I've thought about a lot as well is, you found your pitching coach that you would love to be your pitching
Yeah.
coach like until the end of time in Ruben Niebla. And
Yeah, exactly.
now the fact that he's a local guy, maybe he's more and remember he was hired before Bob Melvin, which is kind of weird when that all went down. Maybe for those reasons, obviously an AJ Preller guy and a local guy, maybe he's more likely to stick around and say, yeah, I'm happy to work with whoever comes in. Hey, if it's Ryan Flaherty, he's already got familiarity with Ryan Flaherty. And so maybe that helps. But I think that has to be a concern if you part with Bob Melvin. Is there a complete overhaul of the coaching staff? And there's some areas where that might be all right, but you found your pitching whisperer, and I would not want to lose that guy.
Yeah, you hope he's a new Darren Balsley, basically a guy who just sticks around here for a decade and a half, no matter who the skipper is, because he really is just that good. I mean, the Padres starting rotation ERA, best in the major leagues. So that's a lot of Ruben Niebla.
On that note, we only have a few minutes left, about 5 minutes left. I wanted to get to some numbers, and that actually touches on one of them. I've mentioned Codify at Codify Baseball. They're always tweeting interesting stuff and just kind of little tidbits. When allowing exactly 4 runs this year, the Padres are 8-15, which is kind of funny. One of the worst records in the league when allowing exactly 4 runs. Just random, why would they struggle when allowing 4 runs? I don't know. We've seen them struggle to scrape runs across, but I thought that was kind of funny. Winning percentage in each given regular season for the National League team with the lowest ERA. It's National League team, lowest ERA, winning percentage year in and year out. Last year, 69%. Year before that, 65%. Before that, 72%, 65%, 56%, 64%. All that being said, teams that have the lowest ERA generally have a pretty high winning percentage. Padres have the lowest ERA in the National League this year, 47. They've won 47% of their games. It is just, it is mind-blowing.
There's no reason for this.
It's wild. Runs scored since June 25th. Padres are in like the top third of the league, but of course have a losing record since the trade deadline in early August. This is an interesting one. Most fair balls hit at 110 miles per hour this year. Atlanta 182. Way down the list, you got to scroll for a bit. Yankees and Angels 88. So that tells you all you need to know. Those two teams aren't very good. Mets 75.
And probably 60 of those belong to Ohtani and Judge.
Yeah. But anyways, Padres are kind of among the leaders, way back of the Braves. But it's just so funny seeing these stats of like all these things that the team has done well, scoring runs, hitting balls hard, pitching, yada yada, and here they are. And it's just been so backwards. And I thought about it, with their 8-0 win on Tuesday, because run differential, people talk about that. The only team in the National League with a positive run differential that isn't in playoff position. And I looked up like their run differential in wins, and it was like plus 296 or something like that. Basically they've won their games. There's at this point 66 wins by 4.22 runs. Their 74 losses have come by 2.85. Not a huge gap, but like a 2-run deficit feels a lot more gettable than like a 4-run deficit. Their record in one run games at that point, I think it's still 6-22. And at that point, they had gone 4-4 in their last 8. They're 4 wins plus 21, 4 losses minus 9. And so that bears it all out. It's like winning games by 5+ runs, losing games by 2 runs. And, so much of it has come down to like And even in their massive comeback, against the Phillies, like opportunities in like 6th, 8th, 9th, again and again and again, and just can't push those guys through. And so that's it. That's the season. That's what it's been.
Yeah, there are 15 teams in the National League. 6 of them have a positive run differential. 5 of them will make the playoffs.
Who's the 6th, Derek?
It's a team that plays at Petco Park.
Oh man,
it's amazing, dude.
It's wild.
Just, and I think maybe if we can just maybe if this is the one thing that happened this year is they can't win close games. That what you just said kind of crystallizes. They'll win in a blowout. They're like, what they are? The Padres are Mike Tyson. If they knock you out, they're really good. But if you stand up to them and you throw a few haymakers back at them, they're not going to beat you.
Yeah, it's been wild, but that's been kind of the consistent trend through the course of the season. What that means, I don't know. How they use that information to address the offseason, we'll find out. We'll have plenty of time to talk about that. Fun pod, fun to talk about some kind of different things. And we're gonna have to do that. We're gonna have to get creative these next few weeks because I think we see what direction the season's going. I'm sure there'll be some news and developments. We'll get on that. And I'm
actually shocked we got through this whole thing without anybody saying that AJ Preller should be fired.
Plenty of time to do that too. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.